think that that's where people really get discouraged, is that they say to themselves, okay, I'm ready to date. I'm ready to put myself out there. They say yes to that first opportunity. They go to that first date, and then let's just say it's a complete disaster. And then they walk away going, well, I told you so. Dating is terrible. This was a terrible date, so I'm no longer going to date anymore. But to me, it's always one of the most beautiful things about dating is this opportunity to learn about yourself. Like, every time you get in front of somebody new, they're going to bring out some things in you that maybe you never thought were there. You're like, oh, well, that's interesting. I've never seen like this part of me come out. And by denying yourself dating in a way to where you're viewing yourself that every time I meet somebody new, there's two things that are going to happen. Number one, I'm going to learn so much about myself. And number two, I'm going to learn more about what I'm looking for. And to not be attached to the outcome, and just to go in being like, I'm going to meet somebody new. This is going to be fantastic. I'm going to meet somebody new. And if it's a no, it just gets you that much closer to the yes.
This is a very exciting episode of Let's Talk Love. I am joined today by my friend, Cat Cantrill. Cat,
Robin,
excited to see you, and I love you.
So
I really, really
I
do.
love you too.
We do.
Yes, feeling is very mutual. I was so tickled. I was like, I felt like I was picked to be part of the cool girls. I was like, okay, I could be a cool girl. I'll be a part of this. I'll be a part of the cool kids
You
club.
are a cool girl. Cat, I realized that. You know, it's really, because when you meet somebody for the first time, just so people, the listeners, we met at Rachel Greenwald's Matchmaker MBA.
Yes.
And when you meet somebody for the first time, and we were surrounded by a group of amazing people. We're in the love business. Like, so all of us are very heart-centered people. And, you are a heart-centered matchmaker. So this is, and you really do come from the heart, but you're also a very, very cool girl.
Oh, thanks, Robin.
We can be both,
Yes, that's right. We can be both. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so those of you that don't know Cat, and you will in the next hour. So Cat, you are a professional matchmaker, you're a dating coach, and you also help people with lifestyle, like styling, when getting ready for love and all of those things. So tell us how you got into this business.
Oh, God. It's these matchmakers always have their own unique stories, like we all do, of how we got into the love industry. And I, as love professionals, and for me, I think my first love is people, and I've always loved people.
I really like that.
It was, even as a small child, like there was something I even remember being my 5th grade class president, because I just was like, I felt compelled to lead and to help and to inspire, even as a young child. And as I became older, just my love for people started to grow, even more so, to where people would start to come to me about their problems and about like, hey, Kat, can I, bounce this off of you? Is this something that I can talk to you about? And there's a joke in my family that I'm that type of person that would stand in line in a grocery store and just complete strangers will just come over and start talking to me. It's just, I'm one of those people. And even my husband knows now, like when people just start coming and talking to me, he'll go, I'll go get the car. I'll go, okay, yeah, I'll meet you. I'll meet you. He knows.
This is going to be a bit. Yeah.
That's right. So my journey.
You're living what you talk, right? Because you're very heart-centered. You're an open-hearted person, and people they feel that, they see that.
Yes. And I love that. And and so I fell into this industry because of the need of someone. And I've been an entrepreneur since 2012 is kind of when I started my entrepreneurial journey. I opened up a business that I would work. It was a dance studio, and I would work in the evenings, and I worked a corporate job during the day, and I had 2 teenagers at home as a single mom. I had been through a divorce. I'd been through the trenches of online dating, trying to meet my someone special, and just kind of, instead of diving completely into dating, I decided to go introspective, go into myself and be like, okay, what can I do to enhance my own life and to make me happy? And I had moved to the state that I'm in now, which is Iowa, and I had moved to Iowa, and I really didn't have a lot of friends, and I had moved here as in my early 30s, and so I built this dance studio not only because I was always a dancer and I knew it was something that I could do. So I built this dance studio, and not only just to teach women how to dance, but also to find friends and to build a community and to connect and to bring like-minded women together. And so with the studio led into coaching, and the coaching piece of what I started to do was really because of my husband, because what ended up happening is I opened up my dance studio, and then a year later I decided to go online dating. And when I went online dating, I found my now husband. And the following year, it was the push of my husband. We had been dating for a year, and he's like, you know what? He's like, you're doing something incredibly special with these women. So why don't you start coaching them and develop your first coaching program? And so that's what I did. So I developed my first coaching program in 2015 to help women like find themselves, find their spark, build their confidence. And it started with this program called Secret Wardrobe, which is taking the items out of your closet that no longer serve you and to really kind of start pouring into yourself. And so this was my life. I quit my corporate job. I was running my studio. I was coaching women, and I also was taking women on these international adventures. So I was taking and traveling with women all over the world. And so I was in such my happy place. I was making an impact. I was helping women. I was connecting and bringing people together. And I was there to help and assist and care for in all of the ways that made me super happy. And in the studio, I would always have women that would say, where do I get a Brian? So my husband's name's Brian. And so I had more and more women starting to approach me about dating and dating advice. And I even remember back then I would take women's phones and I would swipe on their behalf. I'd be like, just give me the phone. Let me see. You're doing this wrong. So, because I'd figured it out for myself, because I had been single for so many years before I found my husband. And so it was 2020 that changed everything for me, forced my studio to close, but that catapulted my coaching career, which turned into dating coaching. So I had a girlfriend who hired me specifically for dating coaching. And I think, to reflect on that time in 2020, a lot of singles at that time really, it forced them to be like, what am I doing? Like, why am I really want a relationship. I want to have this in my life. And so I was helping a lot of single women, but just in different ways. And it kind of just really shed light of like, is this an opportunity in which I can really hone in on this one particular thing that I have solved for myself, that I know that I could help women solve? And so, late of 2020, I started dating coaching, which led into my podcast, which is now called Dear Matchmaker, which led into matchmaking, because as the world was starting to open up, people were like, oh, well, you're a dating coach. Well, do you do matchmaking? And I'm like, is this a thing? Like, is this a service?
And
Because again,
once you open up to those questions, and then you do the research in the world,
yes,
actually matchmaking is a very big thing.
it is. And I was so, because I always felt that something was missing. The coaching piece was great. My clients were having incredible results, but I just felt like, because women would say to me all the time, well, why aren't you helping men? And I'd be like, that's a very valid question. And I, of course, was helping women only because that's my comfort zone. That's who I'd been helping for the last 7-8 years, was coaching women. And so I leaned into matchmaking, found the Matchmakers Alliance, found the Global Love Institute, and just like listen to the need of what people wanted from me and just leaned into it and went with it. And
Yeah.
so here I am. Yeah. And I
That's
can't
a great
imagine
story.
doing anything else. I can't imagine doing anything else,
Right.
honestly. Yeah.
We have a very similar story on how we became matchmakers. But I'm no longer a matchmaker. I'm doing this, which is
Right. Yeah.
I love the path I'm on, and I feel I'm still in the love business, of course, and it's just
Right.
in a different way.
Yeah.
So, Kat, I've been listening to your podcast. It's
Oh,
fantastic because
oh,
you really
thanks.
get a sense of who you are, your approach. You're the real deal. Like,
Oh,
salt of the earth,
Robin.
very genuine and great solid advice. So, I recommend everybody listen to your podcast, Dear
Thanks,
Matchmaker,
Robin.
because I think it's fantastic. So, you
Thank
have this
you.
episode, the 100th episode. And I listened to it and I
You
really
did?
appreciated this particular episode because you've been doing this for, like you said, many years, and your belief systems have changed around dating and relationships and how
Yes.
you are translating that to your clients.
Yes.
So one of the great lessons, which I learned myself when it came to my partner now, who I'm with, I love him so very much. And one of the things is people don't know what they're looking for. They really
No,
don't. Like, people are coming to you, and we've all got single friends. And I know I've been in the same boat of going, this is what I want and need in a partner. And you've got your criteria, and you're saying, but most people really don't know.
they don't.
So let's
They
go
really
into
don't.
that. How does that how does that show up with people that you're talking to every day in your office and your clients?
Hmm.
And how do you help them come to what actually is what they really need rather than,
Yeah.
right?
Than what
Mm.
they want. That's right.
Hmm.
So I think, so one of the things that they teach us is, or that they've taught us and that they've said is that what we're attracted to is what we're familiar with. And so when people come in with their laundry list of these are the things that I want to have or that I need to have in a partnership, or in a person, it's, this list sometimes isn't your own list. So this list that you've created is a list that society tells you that you should have, is a list that maybe your friends and family have told you, is a list that you have in a way where these are certain items in which that are unattainable. So it's a way of form of protection or sabotage from finding that person. So I really true feel that these lists that we have, it's an idea, and I think it's a good jumping off point, but it's not a checklist that this person must have all of these qualities in order to be a good person or a good partner for me. And I think it's what I've seen, especially in matchmaking, is that people think that what they're looking for is somebody who's also opposite. So I've had people in my office say, you know what, I'm really bad with money. So I would love to find somebody who's good with money so they can teach
Yeah.
me how to manage my money. Or I'm really introverted, but I would love to have somebody to kind of bring me out of my shell and to take me places. Okay. On paper, that sounds fabulous. But I always, on the flip side of that, will say, does the extrovert always want to drag the introvert everywhere that they go? I mean, what kind of I always help people understand that there's a flip side. Like think about the other person's perspective. And it is that type of person, is that the type of person who would want to date you? Like what if we talk about somebody who really takes care of managing their money, do they want to date somebody who's careless? Probably
Right.
not. So if there are things, right, if there are things within yourself that you're looking to solve problems or to fill gaps in, you don't seek out a partner to fill those gaps. You fill in those gaps yourself. Like even for
Right.
myself, when I was single, I was so unhappy in my own life and I was looking for romance and love in a way that a partner would bring that into my life. And one of the things I realized, I was like, wait a minute, that is so much pressure to put onto somebody. Why am I not just doing that myself? Like, why am I not pouring into myself, romancing myself and loving myself Because if I'm doing that, then the right person, whoever shows up is, I'm giving, not to sound like woo-woo about this, but I'm giving off this great vibration of loving myself and loving my life. And that
Of
right
course.
partner is going to be attracted to that. And
You're
so,
showing up as your whole loving, self-fulfilled self
yes, yes,
so that you can give your partner, you know, it's like you're overflowing. It's not like you're coming from a place of lack.
that's
One
right.
of the things that I really appreciated because our community, so many of us have been divorced or
Yes,
have been in long-term relationships and we're looking for our next relationship, or
right.
we're in our 30s, late 30s, and it's like so we're coming with a lot of life experience, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So and you talk about how like a lot of us have non-negotiables, but
That's right.
but this is a belief system that you think this is a non-negotiable. So you're actually coming with that on your list, right? I'm not
That's
going to
right.
like, okay, I'm going to give you a great example. One of my best friends is in love and dating this man she's so happy with, and he's a smoker. Okay. And do you think that that was a non-negotiable? Hell, it was. It was. It was
Yep.
like, she's like, I never thought I would date a smoker. What the heck, man? Like, it's disgusting. And she still thinks it's disgusting. Okay.
Right.
But she loves this man. And
Yes.
so they've worked it out. Like, he still smokes, but he does, he's working on quitting, but it's not something that was like, if you don't stop smoking, I'm out. Like, it just
Right.
wasn't the way that she approached it, because she's like, he comes to me in this relationship with so much that I really want and need in a partner. So do you think the
Yes.
smoking is non-negotiable? It's no longer non-negotiable.
That's right.
And you said the same thing about with Brian, right?
Yep.
He, like, you had non-negotiables, which actually in the long run did not matter. Like, he
No.
had children, right? A young
Yep.
child, right? Can you tell
Yep.
the story
Yep.
about this, Kat? Because I think a
Yeah.
lot of us can actually relate to this, and I think it's important. This is a really important one. Like, your
Yeah.
non-negotiables may not be non-negotiables.
That's right. And when I first started my matchmaking business, I would lead off with the non-negotiables, and I would, under no
Mm.
circumstances would I match two individuals that had any of the non-negotiables on each other's lists. And now I don't even ask anymore.
Right, good.
It's not even part of the conversation, because non-negotiables do come from our own. So it's not only like what we think is in our best interest or what someone else thinks is in our best interest, but also it's based off of our previous experiences, right? So our non-negotiables is
Mhm.
a way of protection too. So for me, I had, right out of the gate, when I was going through a divorce, I had dated a man who was also going through a divorce. And in the end, um, it ended up horribly, actually. And part of it was that he felt that he never had time to like be single. And so like
Hmm.
he was he was dating other women as we were in a relationship, and his explain, the way that he explained it was that, well, I just didn't know, and I was never really single because I was dating you through my divorce. And so in my head I was like,
Hmm.
okay, well, I don't want that to happen again. So I'm just not going to date a man going through a divorce, because that
Mhm.
way that protects me from any potential harm, basically. Not to say that let's look at all the other red flags that were there in the very beginning that I chose to not look at. But no, we're going to take away from that I'm not going to date a man that's going through a divorce, which is fine. And some people have this non-negotiable. So I had two, because I had two teenagers at the time when I met my husband. So my two non-negotiables really were, I'm not going to date a man going through a divorce, and I'm not going to date a man with small children, because my children were already
Mhm.
grown-ish. And I was
I think
like,
this is a very common one, Kat, that people will say,
yeah,
I don't want somebody with young children, because if
yep,
you've got older kids, you're like, I don't want to be dragged back into that era. I'm through it.
that's right. That's right.
I can, yep, yep.
And that's where I was at. And when I met
Mhm.
my husband, he was going through a divorce. I was his first date, actually, going through his
Mhm.
divorce, and he had a 6-year-old. Now, I had a
Yep.
15-year-old and a 12-year-old, and now he has a 6-year-old. And in my mind, I was like, oh my gosh. Now, I had a moment where I was like, is this a compromise I'm willing, instead of me going, oh, I'm going to settle, it was, is this a compromise that I'm willing to make? And why do I have this criteria? And why are these my non-negotiables? And does it really matter? And in the end, thank goodness I didn't like push him aside because he's the best. I mean, he is the best relationship I've ever been in. And if I would have dismissed him because of these things, I would have passed up on an incredible human being. And I'll give you another example. So I have a 65-year-old coaching client that she's 65, she's still working, she's vibrant, she's amazing, super smart, beautiful. And I put her online, and one of her non-negotiables was dating a man who still had children at home. And she's 65. And so you say to yourself, okay, well, I can kind of I can understand that. I mean, that makes sense. Well, now she's in a 2-month relationship with a 67-year-old man who has a 10-year-old and a 9-year-old at home.
Right.
Now, and I reminded her, I was like, she started to see him, and I'm like, remember that thing you told me about not wanting to date a guy who still had small children at home? And she's like, he's so worth it. I'm like, exactly. And I think, to me, there's a definite difference between settling and compromise. Settling is when someone can't fulfill your needs. Compromising is like you have this rule book and these things that are in your head where you're like, oh, they must be worldly. Okay. I hear this all the time. Must be worldly. Okay. He's only traveled to 2 states. I'm like, but is he open to being worldly? Does he want to travel with you? Like, that's the important piece. Right. Like, can he fill the need of your desire to travel? If the answer is yes, then the answer is yes. I mean, to compromise
I think it's taking out. I think it's taking out. It's taking out the judgment piece, which we are so judgmental.
Oh,
as
yes.
human beings, we're judging everything,
gosh.
Black, white, like yes, right, good, wrong,
right,
yes, no, yes, no, right, wrong. And what I've really learned in this relationship that I'm in is, and you talk a lot about this, Kat, is around it's changing our belief systems. It's actually letting go of beliefs that are no longer serving us and being way more open-minded and giving people a chance. You know, it's like we can't jump into the future. This is another way that I've totally adjusted and changed, is like I'm no longer so future focused. It's like just be here, be present. And you are like loving this person and learning so much about yourself and like just the time and the joy. Like, why are you focused so much on how things are going to turn out? Like, you know, a year, 2, 3, 4 years down the road. Like, really, what is the what is the rush? There's nothing we need to do. We just have to be with this person. So let's talk about the dating, because you talk about how dating is a skill. We know this, right? There's skills, and dating is a numbers game.
Yes.
Right? So you do have to get out there and date. Yep. So and you do say this too. You're like, yeah, we have to be rejected just as much as we are rejecting people. We have to learn about rejection and how rejection is protection in my eyes. It's like that person doesn't think you're a fit for them. So yes, please carry on.
Yes.
Let's talk about how dating's a numbers game. What do you say to your clients about that?
Yeah, and my stance on that has changed, because initially I was like, you date with intent and you only say yes if it's a hell yes. But now it's just by watching people and watching the connections that happen, you have to practice. You have to practice the vulnerability piece of putting yourself in front of someone and getting to know someone for the first time. And I think to put so much pressure on this person must be the person, because this is the date that I've said yes to, and people start to romanticize what it's going to be like and start to fantasize and future cast, and all of these, the romanticizers out there love to do this. And it puts so much pressure on this complete stranger and this person that you've never met before, usually. And to me, if you know that there's other options and you are putting yourself out there and you're open to opportunity and you're saying yes more and you are having a more steady dating life, then you don't put so much pressure on each encounter, that you know to yourself, okay, if this person says that we're not a good fit, it's okay because I know there's going to be someone else. And I think that that's where people really get discouraged, is that they say to themselves, okay, I'm ready to date. I'm ready to put myself out there. They say yes to that first opportunity. They go to that first date, and then let's just say it's a complete disaster. And then they walk away going, well, I told you so. Dating is terrible. This was a terrible date, so I'm no longer going to date anymore. But to me, it's always one of the most beautiful things about dating is this opportunity to learn about yourself. Like, every time you get in front of somebody new, they're going to bring out some things in you that maybe you never thought were there. You're like, oh, well, that's interesting. I've never seen like this part of me come out. And by denying yourself dating in a way to where you're viewing yourself that every time I meet somebody new, there's two things that are going to happen. Number one, I'm going to learn so much about myself. And number two, I'm going to learn more about what I'm looking for. And to not be attached to the outcome, and just to go in being like, I'm going to meet somebody new. This is going to be fantastic. I'm going to meet somebody new. And if it's a no, it just gets you that much closer to the yes. And the rejection is like protection. I 100% agree with that. And the rejection is also redirection. It's both.
Right.
And
right.
I always tell people that if someone says no to you, they don't know, they have no idea who you are. They've only known you for 2 hours. So if they're a person that's chasing the spark, if they're a person has that checklist, right, where it has to be all of these things, and you don't meet that criteria, then that's on them, not on you. Like, it's not your job to fit into someone else's box. It's your job just to show up as yourself, and for that person to see you for who you are. And if you don't fit their criteria, great. That means it's someone else that you're getting that much closer to the person, in which you're going to find that person that sees all of your greatness and goes, more of that, please. I'll take more of that, please. That'd be great. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So another one you talk about is opening up your age gap.
Yes.
On either.
I would be firm about like 5 years older, 5 years younger. But I find what I have seen is that I now go about 10 years. So 10 years for a woman, her going up 10 years in age, and then maybe going 5 years because what I've seen is if it's more than 10 years, then the science tells us then sometimes one partner can turn more into a parental role, not on purpose. It just naturally will happen. And so I feel like that 10-year mark is a really good kind of gauge of being like, okay, being open to 10 years older, and maybe for women and 5 years younger, and then the vice versa for men, dating 5 years older and then possibly 10 years younger. So yeah, I have expanded the gap just a little bit, just because I've seen those age differences and I see them work. People that are 8, 9, 10 years apart, and I think that that's okay.
Yeah, I think so too. You talk about how first impressions count. Of course they count. But I really so how is it, because you're doing so much dating coaching and matchmaking. So how, I want to hear like a good example of a story where it's like people are showing up without their with a bad first impression. I mean, you want to you need to make an effort every time.
You have to make an effort. Yes.
there's no room for not. I really do think so. It's investing in this time you're going to share with somebody, and first impressions, of course, they count.
Well, you said it earlier, which is we judge, right? We judge people all the time. And people have this saying, like, if they can't take me at my worst, then they don't deserve me at my best, or whatever that saying is. And I'm like, yes, but you can't connect with people at your worst. Like, if you are connecting with people at your worst, usually those are not your good people, right? We want to connect with people initially at our best, because as we get to know someone, and that honeymoon period starts to fade away, and we start to be more human, we take off the rose-colored glasses usually after the honeymoon period, and we start to really see this person where they're like, oh, they have quirks. They have, they like their coffee a certain way. They like to sleep a certain way. Oh, they love, we notice these things about, they're humans. We notice the humanity of each other. That eventually by that time, you have already built such an emotional connection with that person that when you see somebody at their worst, you're like, that's okay, because I've seen you at your best. So like, I'm willing, let's move through this. Let's move through this rocky time together. I'm there for you. I'm here to, but if you connect with somebody at your worst, you can't get past that. It's like, first impressions are everything. They say it only takes 7 seconds to make a great first impression. And the way, I hate to compare it to this, but it's like when you're going for a job interview, right? You don't show up to your job interview, even though do not interview. I'm not saying, I'm not talking about how you conduct the date. I'm just talking about the energy that you bring into the date, right? So when you go in for the job interview, you bring your resume and you talk about on your resume, you have all of your accomplishments, all of your awards, all of your successes, all of your, all of your degrees, all of these bragging points about you, right? And not only that, but you show up physically like you care, that you put effort because you want to make a great first impression. You don't go in there talking about how you didn't get along with your last boss. You don't go in there talking about how you got fired. You don't go in there in your sweatpants and say to yourself, well, if you can't accept this, I mean, this is how I'm normally going to work. So if you can't accept me at this, then you don't deserve me.
Right.
It's the same concept. When you go in for that first date, you want to make a great first impression because everyone, and you said it earlier, we're always looking for things to say no. We're like on alert all the time where we're like, okay, how did they show up? And if you show up in a way as if you don't care, you're not putting forth the effort, you're coming in with a negative energy, then that person, they will look at it and go, it's a no.
Right.
Because it
For
shows them that you don't put enough care. It's not that, and I think this is a point that some people miss, which is you're not showing up on this date in this way for them. You're not putting on makeup for them. You're not getting your hair done for them. You're not putting on those nice shoes for them. You're doing it for yourself because you owe it to yourself to put your best foot forward so that you are presenting yourself in a way that you feel good, that you feel seen in a way that they, so that when you walk away from that date, you can say, I gave it, I know that I showed up in my best. And if it doesn't work, it's okay. But it's like your energy of how you feel about yourself also affects what the outcome may be on that date.
Right.
Sorry, you can tell I'm very passionate about that.
No, I am too. So you have this formula, the 2-3-5 formula. I really like your formula. So what is the 2-3-5 formula? Like first thing you want to do is ask 2 questions.
That's right.
You want to ask yourself 2 questions.
That's right. So this is, these are for my spark chasers. These are for the people that are like, well, if it's, fireworks and all these things that are supposed to happen on a first date.
Chasers.
So this is really for everyone. So the 2 stands for the 2 questions you are to ask yourself after the date, which is, am I curious to know more about them? So do you walk away saying, oh man, that person was really interesting. I would love to know more. Like there's some things that we touched on and I'm kind of curious. I would love to know more about them. And the second question is, do I like the version of myself around that person? Because again, people can bring out different parts of us. They can bring out the more timid, reserved, shy part where we're just kind of more of an observer, or they can bring out the super fun, spunky part of us. Like it just depends. And so do you like the version of yourself around that person? And if you like the answer to both those questions, the 3 stands for you are to give this opportunity 3 dates. Because the first date really isn't a date. It's the awkward kind of, can we connect? Am I interested enough? Am I curious enough? The second date is really kind of the first date where you're like, okay, now we're comfortable enough with each other that we can start really having some banter and some great conversation and talk about our passions and our hobbies and our interests and the things that light us up. And then by the time the third date, you're going to see, and usually by the third date, we're having a little bit more serious conversations, talking about possibly politics and exes and those kinds of things. And by the end of the third date, if you feel that you still like the answer to those two questions, then to keep leaning in. Now, by the end of the third date, if there's no sparks or chemistry, because I know that that's part of it, I'm not saying that that's not a part of it. If by the end of the third date, then there's no chemistry, then you can say to yourself, okay, well, I gave it 3 dates. It just wasn't a good fit. And it's not so much of your time, right? But enough. And I think one of the things about this formula is that, and I always tell my women this, that if it's a maybe, it's a yes. If it's a maybe, it's a yes. If you're just like, maybe, then that's a yes. It's only a no when it's a no. But if it's a maybe, it's a yes. So then the 5 stands for your 5, the only things that you should be paying attention to in these connections, in these 3 dates, as you're asking yourself these 2 questions, is not vanity metrics like, oh, can I see him, us walking side by side on the beach, what would that look like on camera? Like, or whatever, people have these different romantic ideas of what the person's supposed to look like. So these aren't vanity metrics you're to pay attention to. These are your core values. What are your core values? And does this person represent what you're looking for? So if you are a super religious person, it's in your best interest to also, if religion is super important to you and that's one of your core values, it's kind of important to also date somebody who also has a strong belief system, right? If you're somebody who that security or financial stability is super important to you and that's one of your values, then you want to make sure and date somebody who also reflects, because if not, in the end, there's going to be some friction points in that. And so just pay attention to what your 5 core values are, and knowing those values, asking those 2 questions and giving the person 3 dates. So there's my 2, 3, 5. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think if the 3 dates have gone, even Kate, even if you're not feeling this overwhelming, like, oh my gosh, I really want to jump this person's bones. Like, there is so much chemistry. I'm feeling it now. Like, this is good.
Yeah.
I think if you're still curious,
Yes.
and that you definitely feel good about yourself and their presence, so the 2 questions are still really ever present. Why not go on the 4th date and the 5th date? Because as we know, we do know this from working with clients, like over and over again, the chemistry does and
Builds.
can build. Yes.
Yep.
Like, and I think too often, even as especially when we're younger, it's all about chemistry. It's like, oh my God, that person's so hot. Like, like that's as a teenager or like early 20s, like you're thinking those, like I can hear my daughter and she's in university. Like that's all she talks about. Like when you talk about boys, right? But as we get older, it's like the core values piece is so important. How is this person showing up to other people around you when you're like, walking, I could think about when I was on like my first date with my partner. It's like, we would be walking on the sidewalk and there was so many things that happened in that hour that we were together that I was like, wow, this is a solid human being. Just his behavior and his actions.
Yeah.
And you're not going to know this about somebody unless you have first, like 1 date, 2 date, 3 date, 4 date, 5 date. You want to see them in different environments.
That's right.
And how they are behaving. Like
That's
on
right.
paper, we are something, but it's all about actions and how we're showing up as a human being. So
that's right.
That's presented over time.
Yes. And they've done a lot of research on it, and people, it's called the mere exposure effect, which means like the more you're exposed to somebody, actually, and as long as you're liking who you are around that person, that the more you're exposed to them, they do become more attractive. They do.
Yeah.
Over time. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go through some questions that I know you are being asked or objections.
Yes.
That you are being presented with over and over again. And we hear it, right? And it's just like very prevalent. So like, I don't want to do online dating, Kat. I know. I want to remain, like, first of all, there's like many reasons why people don't want to online date. They want to remain anonymous. Yep. Or they live in a small place, or even like I've got a lot of stories that I can share for this, but reasons why people don't want to online date. They're like, I just want to meet somebody in real life. And I think it's a reason, it's a valid, whatever it is. But what is your approach when you say to people, I refuse to online date or I don't want to online date?
Yeah. So usually when people say that, and I would say 90% of the people do say that when they first walk into my office, where they're just like, I've tried online dating, it doesn't work. I don't want to do it. Um, and then I always ask why. Like, tell me about your experience. Like, tell me about what happened when you were online dating. Well, usually something, something, something. And then I do a little bit deeper where I'm like, okay, well, what pattern did you see with who you were saying yes to and what was happening on these dates, or why were you facing burnout, or what was going on? And usually, in my experience, people online date wrong, completely wrong. There is no manual when you become single that they go, oh, great, you're single. Here's your manual of how to online date. Here are the websites. This is what you do. So many people, it's that whole dopamine, being addicted to the dopamine, the alerts that are going off. Okay, the maximizer that's like swiping, swiping. Okay, who else is out there? Who else is out there? The relation shopping about it all, right? So it's overwhelming and it's underwhelming and everything in between. And so I educate people really why it is that they're feeling this way. It's not the app's fault. It's the user's fault. You don't have boundaries that are in place. You're saying yes to the wrong people. You're texting for way too long. Your profile's not that great. Like I say that. I'm like, show me your profile. And I'm like, whoa, whoa.
Yes, we need to do some major adjustments here. Yep.
Yeah, because usually
Yep.
people don't put any mind. It's not mindful. They're just like so excited to see what's out there, and it's totally human. Of course, I'm single. Ooh, what's out there? Let me hurry up and just upload some photos really quick, and let me just get to swiping. So I get it, but the majority of the time, the profiles are not that great, and just like we said before, people are always looking for reasons to say no, and people are so judgmental. Why would you give them ammunition on your profile for opportunities to say no to?
Right. And
Yeah.
so if people just and we live in the world like where you don't have to be behind a computer and your phone all day long. We live in the
Right.
real life, like, day to day. So what
Yes.
are some real tangible like ways that people can approach or meet other people in real life? What kind of
Yeah.
tips are you
Okay.
sharing with
So,
just like navigating life every day and like, putting
yeah.
yourself out there?
So the first is it's a lot of these are no-brainers to some people. So I'll just kind of go through a list. So doing things that make you happy and that you love doing. So what are those activities? What are those hobbies? What are those types of things that you love to do that bring you joy, and that maybe it's something that you've always wanted to explore and have never done, and you're always waiting for the right opportunity or the right person to go with. Just do it yourself. So is that a travel group? Is that pottery? Is that a poetry class? Is that a real estate class, especially for my women? If you get, a lot of people, I mean, there's a lot of men that are like seeking out real estate, real estate, interested in real estate. Is it like find that thing um, that you really would love to do or explore more? But that's only half of the equation. The other half of that equation is that, yes, immerse yourself in clubs and organizations and hobbies and interests and things that you can do to meet people in real life. But the second half of that is that you have to be open to have conversation. Like, don't just go to these events expecting people just to walk up to you. If you're a person who wants to meet somebody organically, my friend, you also have to put in the legwork. Meaning, if you see somebody that you're interested in, it's the perfect opportunity. Go over and introduce yourself. Like, I've had so many women complain to me about men not approaching, and I always say, girl, it's
That's not up to
2024.
it's not up to that right there has to go because it's not up
Has to
to the men
go.
to be approaching you. That's
No,
just right. Yeah,
no.
it has to go
Yes.
both ways.
It has to go both ways. And so if you want to meet somebody in real life and this is what you want and it wants to be and you want to be organic with it, I totally get behind it. I mean, that's what matchmaking is. But still put forth the effort. Like enroll in the thing, but then also as you go into it, say to yourself, okay, I'm going to go into this event and I'm going to make a promise to myself then I'm going to sign up for this pottery class and I'm going to meet 3 new people in this pottery class. And I think the mindset too that you need to have is that it's not just in the people that you meet, but these people that you meet might know someone, right?
Right.
So it's not just, I'm going to join this, I'm only going to join singles organizations or singles clubs or whatever, which those are great too. But make some new friends. And then those friends might know somebody who's single who's like, oh, you know what? I have this single friend who you might be a really good match for. So expanding your network as much as you possibly can. So if you're wanting to meet people in real life, it's really up to you, truly.
Yes. And I think that,
And not just the grocery store where you're reaching for the same orange. Sorry.
yeah, right. But I do think it's be your own matchmaker. Ask your people around you.
Yes.
Doesn't matter who you're
Yes,
meeting.
that too.
Who do you know
Yes.
that's single that you think you may want to introduce me to? You don't know
Right.
until you start asking people. Just keep talking about it. Keep asking, right? I know
Yeah,
sometimes
I always
it's very
say,
uncomfortable to do that, but why not?
I always tell people, do people know that you're open for business? Like, do people know
that's
that?
good. Yeah.
Like, tell
So
them that you're open. Yeah.
Yes. So before we close with a blessing, I want to hear like one of your most recent like success stories so that we can all, we all love a love story.
I know. Oh gosh. Okay. So so once my clients, I always say they graduate. So once they graduate, they have an opportunity to just connect with me and to give an update. And, so I had a woman who came to me for both matchmaking and for dating coaching, both. So she wanted to online date as we were matchmaking. And I helped her with her profile. I told her exactly what she should and should not be paying attention to. She went home that night and swiped and connected with a guy and I didn't even get a chance to match her. Started dating this guy. And as she was dating him, we were doing these little touch points of making sure she wasn't getting in the way, making sure she was paying attention to all of the right things and not sabotaging it, because she was one of those women that loved the bad guy, would date men who were emotionally unavailable. And this was a guy who was showing up, and so I was trying to get her to not push him away. I'm like, don't push him away. They just got engaged just like a few months ago. And so I'm so happy for her. So yeah, that's like the biggest success story in the last couple months. So yeah.
I really like that story. I mean, these are things that she made an adjustment to her online profile that made a huge difference in the people that she was even meeting, right? She met her partner online.
Yep.
And I also really like the fact that you were her ally and coach with like, okay, don't sabotage this, do this. I really appreciate the fact that you were coaching her throughout, because I think that's probably excellent. I think more people need to hire a dating coach. Like, I really do.
Agree.
Like,
Yes. No, I agree. I mean, it's, I think that again, it's the permission that people need to have. Like, I always say there are 2 things that are assumed when we leave the house. Number 1, that we know how to manage money, and number 2, that we know how to manage our love life. And we don't know how to do either. We screw up how we manage our money and our love life. And yet these are the 2 things in life, money and love, that are the most important. And yet the 2 areas of our life that we refuse to ask for help for. Why?
Wow. That's awesome,
Yeah.
Kat. So your website is The Heart Agency.
Yes.
Oh, I love it. It's
theheartagency.com. And
yes.
And well, there's a new website which is called scottsdalematchmaker.com. So there's 2 of them. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I hope that people reach out to you, and
I hope so
you're
too.
just such a treat to talk to, and I love connecting with you,
Robin.
and I always learn so much. So thank you.
Yes, thank you for having me. I loved being here. Thank you so much.
I'm going to close with a blessing for us and for our listeners, and this is really based on all that you teach and you help your clients with. So may we let go of our past. Our past lives are a part of our story. They do not define us. Today gives us an opportunity to create a new story. May we be open-minded. May we change our minds and rid ourselves of old beliefs that no longer serve us. And may we remember, life is a journey of learning and growth. By practicing new skills in relating, we can approach our dating lives with more confidence and enthusiasm. And also remember that dating can be fun. We didn't talk about the fun of it, right?
I know, yes.
So thank you, dear Cat Cantrill,
Thank
for
you,
being with us today and for
Robin.
all the wisdom you shared.
Thank you. So wonderful to be here. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for listening. Visit realloveready.com to continue learning with us. Please rate and review this podcast. Your feedback helps us get you the tools and guidance you need to form more loving relationships and create positive change in your life. We at Real Love Ready acknowledge and express gratitude for the Coast Salish people, the stewards of the land on which we work and play, and encourage you to take a moment to acknowledge and express gratitude for those that have stewarded and continue to steward the land that you live on as well. Many blessings and much love.